The dictionary defines exile as the state of being barred from one's native country, typically for political or punitive reasons. Using that description, that definition, we might be hard-pressed to think of ourselves as being exiles. Indeed, the reverse is true, because we have not been able to go beyond our own borders. That may be changing in the next few days. We might see ourselves being more under house arrest rather than being exiles. And yet there has been a sense in which we have been in exile, because there are people and places that we have been barred from. For much of this last few weeks, we've not been able to see family or visit them in their homes. And of course, we haven't been able to come here to church. That too is changing. But we don't want to rush that process, because we want this to be a safe place for you to return to. And indeed, it might be some time before some of you feel confident and able to return to the physical building. The experience of the Jewish exiles returning should encourage us and give us insight of what we're going through at the moment. It was in 539 BC that Cyrus the Great decreed that the people could return home, and in particular to Jerusalem. A bit like those big announcements that we hear on TV by the government as the lockdown is gradually lifted. But it's one thing to have a decree or an announcement. There is preparation that's required to put that into practice. And so for the people returning home, they had to get ready to return home. They had a long journey ahead of them. And indeed, we believe it was over a period of years that the exiles returned home. I hope for us that it's about weeks or months rather than years for us to be able to return to church. But just as the exiles returned in two waves, it may well be that people coming back to church will be in waves. So some might be able to come back fairly quickly, but for others it may take a longer process. I want to reassure those of you who think it might be a long time before you're back in church that when we do meet here, we won't forget you. You'll be in our thoughts and prayers, and indeed we won't feel that we're truly back until the whole family are able to come and worship together. So what about this intervening period before the church opens again? I want to encourage us not to see this as wasted time, wasted months, but rather as a time of preparation. Certainly the elders and the church staff have already begun the process of preparing to reopen. And your prayers would be appreciated as we seek clarity and wisdom. And just as the Jewish people would have needed good leadership to make the physical church journey back home, as well as the mental and spiritual transition as smooth as possible, so that is a priority for us who are leading Reigate Park Church. The United Reformed Church as a whole has also offered us various help in that transition, that return. Recently they've issued some guidelines entitled Emerging into the New Normal. Emerging into the new normal. That reminds us that this is a process. It's not a quick fix. And secondly, it reminds us too that we won't be returning to life as we knew it. Returning home for the exiles had its challenges, especially in terms of priorities. What should they concentrate on? Should it be about rebuilding their homes? Should it be about making the city of Jerusalem secure by rebuilding the walls? Or was it about building a new temple where they could worship God? I wonder what our priorities are as we think about entering into the new normal. Will it be about our own needs? Will it be about the needs of others? And in all that busyness, what will the role of faith have to play? Or will we push God to one side? All these areas, I would want to suggest, are important, and we shouldn't neglect one at the expense of others. So yes, it's about ourselves and our needs. It's also about the needs of others. It's also about putting God in the centre. There are two striking things about Jeremiah's words. He's concerned about bringing the exiles back. In other words, people are a priority for him. It's not about putting the economy first or re-establishing the political structure. Not that these are not important, but we mustn't forget people. We mustn't forget everyone. We mustn't forget those who might be marginalised. But before that, he talks about bringing the articles of the temple back. He doesn't spell out what these were, but it assumes that when the people fled, they took some items from the temple with them. What they discovered in exile, and I hope you've discovered in lockdown, is that God was with them, even though they were no longer able to worship in the temple, and we are no longer able to worship in church. And so those things they took with them, I don't know whether they actually used them in their worship in this new setting, or whether they just simply stored them safely. But they would still have acted as a reminder of who God was and for God's promise that he would restore them one day. I wonder what we took with us into lockdown from church. We didn't actually give you much chance to take anything physically from the church, but I'm sure you've taken with you memories of services, of things that you've learnt in this place. Some of us at home will have Bibles. Some of us may even have hymn books. I want to make an offer to you today, and that is, if you haven't got a Bible or you haven't got a hymn book, we would gladly get one to you so that you can take something of what you used in the past to engage with God into your current situation. So please just give us a ring, let us know, and we'll get that to you. As important as the temple was, and as special as the church has been to us, God is not confined to a place, not even to what we might consider a holy place. When the exiles brought back those items from exile to Jerusalem, the point is firmly made that God is going to be at the centre of this new life. Yes, in the temple, but also in their life and living. For us too, we need to be intentional about this, that as we return to a new way of life, God will be at the centre. Finally, this passage says something very profound about our mission and message for the future. Jeremiah reminds us that the prophets, and we can take that to include the church today, have had to say some harsh things in the past. Evil and wrongdoing must be challenged. And there was plenty of that leading up to the exile. But that's not the only thing that a true prophet has to say. The true prophet also brings a message of peace. The new normal is going to pose great challenges with unresolved issues through bereavement, through mental health and well-being concerns, as well as sadly broken relationships, loss of employment and security. Into that troubled world, God is calling us to speak peace. You and me, the church, to speak peace. But we're not just called to speak peace. We're called to live out peace. So providing places and times for peace to be discovered, and above all else for us to become agents of peace. We have been through a lot, we are going through a lot. May we discover in this period God's peace. But may we also, in this time of preparation, help others to find that peace. So as they're concerned about the future and how they will get back into life once more, let us help them with what we've discovered about God's peace in our lives. So the church is called to be true prophets. To be true prophets denouncing evil, but also to be true prophets in order that we might bring and live a message of peace into what is and what will be a turbulent world. Amen.